Hi everyone, it's Kasia from Tarot Map. Grab a cuppa. I'm going to show quite a few decks. And this is a VR to Lisa from Tarot Alchemist about tarot and healing categories. So as you know, tarot is not only used for predictions and exploring different answers and questions and options, but also by many of us it's used for psychological work, for therapy, for exploring our psyches, and for doing a lot of healing on many different levels. And Lisa in her video mentions 5 categories. And I watched also Simon's from Two Spirits video, and I know that quite a few people have done VR to this video. So I wanted to jump in because I find it fascinating, and it's just something that I often use tarot for. And I think it's really good to spread the word about it, because when you start learning in some countries, like for example in Poland, very often tarot is narrowly associated only with prediction, and nobody else thinks about using it for something else. So I think it's important to talk about different aspects of tarot and how it can be used for healing. So the first category is inner child category, and for me personally, I don't really had any bad memories regarding my childhood. I was a very happy child. I was brought up without my father, but my mom was really like amazing and strong personality, and she held it all really well together. Plus my father always came to visit, so I never felt like I didn't have a father, but definitely he wasn't present. But in any case, I don't really, I never had a big kind of drive or need to do inner child healing. I feel my inner child is very strong. Even now, I'm like 42 and I'm feeling quite young and spirited, and I feel that inner child very present within me. So I picked a few decks that are connected to fairy tales, because as a child I used to love fairy tales. These were my favorite books and stories, and in general, like listening to stories and imagining things were something that I loved to do. So for any type of healing connected to that area of my life or that period of my life, I chose that inner child tarot by Isha Lerner. And I picked a few cards. So these are the cups. You can distinguish the cards via the frames, and they're very childlike, evoking, stories. So these are wands, and this is swords. They're very evocative for this childlike moments, and this is a deck that I definitely feel drawn to, and I'm even not trying to heal, but trying to connect more to my inner child. And this is a deck, and the major arcana each has a story attached to it. Sleeping Beauty for death, Little Red Cap for the Fool. So the guardian angel here is for temperance. So it's a beautiful deck in my opinion, and also the book that comes with it, it's quite thick, and it's very cool as a companion book. I love to read it. There is always a sentence or two that just go like, oh, wow, yeah, that's exactly what I meant. And another one is the one that a lot of people want, and I hope you guys can find it somewhere at some point. I was lucky enough to get it as a gift. It was Lisa Hunt's Once Upon a Time. So also fairy tale tarot. And this one is connected also to different stories. Each card has a fairy tale attached to it. And as I said, as a child, I used to love fairy tales. I still love them, but they were my favorite books. I remember reading like one of the anthology of different fairy tales from around the world. I used to read it like 8 times or something. So I remember loving those fairy tales as a child. So this deck is also beautiful when I want to remind myself of some magic in the world and listen to that innocence and innocent part of me, then I go for those. And also because I was brought up Catholic and I was raised, you know, when we prayed to the guardian angels and we went to the church and all of this. So this guardian angel tarot deck by Doreen Virtue also just, you know, first of all, it's very kind of positive. It turns everything negative into a positive. And that's how I was brought up, that, you know, everything is safe and everything will be fine. Even though the reality of communism and, you know, there was a lot of fucked up situations in the outside world, but then the guardian angel and religion were quite present and helpful. And that reminds me of my grandmother, reminds me of my mom, reminds me of my dad. So the guardian angel definitely is one of those healing decks for the inner child. The next category is the teenage healing. To be honest, I never even thought of teenage healing, but as a teenager, I definitely felt a big shift from the childhood. I was a little bit, what would you say? I was not disconnected, but it was quite a hard time. I remember being quite like original thinker. I didn't like hanging out with girls. I know that I loved hanging out with boys because they were like abstract thinkers and I loved the conversations with boys. That's what I remember. And I was quite a loner and my mind was going on in all different directions. So I definitely felt that this tarot of the hidden realms shows a part of that feeling that I had when I was a teenager. I had a very original creative mind, but also I was quite like insecure about it. Like I didn't trust myself so much. So I did feel like I was living a little bit sometimes in another world. And I was quite of a loner, so somehow the feel of this deck reminds me of that energy. I think any of those kind of quirky decks would be great for my teenager because I felt quirky. I felt like I'm not fitting well very much, like I'm a different kind of person. So this is Holy Simple Tarot. So it's that deck. And it is this quirky, it has this quirkiness to it, but also this kind of, you know, like loneliness as well. The images are quite simple and like comic-like. So they have this inner teenager feel to them for me. A phantasmagorical theater tarot as well. It's really cool. It's actually quite interesting deck, and I really think that this booklet is great. So the phantasmagoric theater. So it's also this quirkiness and that kind of different reality and different idea about what people do, how people look. So it's much actually softer when you read the book than just the pictures. But this deck is quite yeah, just evocative for me because I felt quite lonely and a bit like I think this Nicoletta Ceccoli, it's also one of those decks that I can, in general, this is my favorite shadow and healing deck, and it always points out, and I don't really connect it so much to the inner child or even teenager, but more teenager when I'm like university, let's say. So this one would be great because then I'm much more emotional and I'm much more, you know, I suffer and I'm falling in love and people don't love me back and stuff like this. So this one, like I had deep emotions and a lot was happening. Also Kitty Kahane Tarot, I think, for this inner teenager. It's got the quirkiness, but also like this, you know, like comic book and storytelling quality to this deck. So it speaks to me also, and I can go in to that feeling of being a teenager and young adult, and this quirky kind of feeling about it. And I think that's it. And then there's like this category of general and everyday healing decks. So I think every day when I go through like my, you know, if there's anything that I need to like really address or something, so I do go through, like, any deck can do it for me, but I love to check up with the Aquarian Tarot, just because it's very it just works. I don't know how to explain it. It always kind of really shows, uh, for me, it shows the truth as it is. So it just speaks very bluntly and very clear. Another deck that I recently really love and was working with a lot, it's this Illuminated Tarot by Carol Herze, and I'm waiting actually for a replacement. If you watched my previous video about it, I was a bit disappointed with the different font on the deck, but she's going to send me another deck. I'm just waiting for it. So she was really lovely, and her customer service was great, and we came to conclusion that she will send me a new deck, and it's going to be a little bit different version, a little bit bigger, so I will show it off when it comes. Another deck that really is beautiful for everyday healing is Tarot de Saint Croix, and I use this deck for client readings, but also for myself whenever I feel like I need a little bit wider perspective, different perspective, interesting perspective, a change of perspective. You know, sometimes we get so stuck about a situation or a person, and an original healing deck like this, it's very cool to have at hand in those moments. I love also to use the Mother Piece or the Ancestral Path Tarot for the just regular general healing, and very often I do use the Dark Goddess Tarot because it's quite punchy, but also I have a really deep connection with it. And then also Marseille decks. I really love using the major and major spreads, which Veronica Jude introduced me to. And so I use like 2 major sets, or I do where's the full heading spread. But I often also use the whole deck, because pips very often give me that freedom to explore and maybe seeing something from another perspective. Anything else? As I said, any deck is fine for me for this everyday general healing. Dark and shadow decks, when I feel like really kind of in need of like proper sitting and checking up with myself deep. Definitely Dark Goddess Tarot comes to help. And that book, the companion book that comes with this deck, to me it's invaluable. I really love it, and I'm so grateful to Ellen Rolenzi Prince for writing that book. It's really amazing. So I'm really like familiar with this deck, and this deck has a constant presence in my life. Another deck, it's also the Tarot of the Crown. I've got the first edition. And also from another like very grounded magical perspective, this deck is wonderful to work with for me when I'm feeling really kind of down, or want to explore my options, or want to empower myself. Weaver's Oracle, this deck definitely, since I have it, I work with it every month, every week. I started doing it every day, but these energies to me are very potent and powerful. So sometimes pulling them every day, it's just not enough time to really get into the energy of a weaver and work with it and see how it actually, invites you to play in your life personally. So the Weaver's Oracle for the Dark Shadow decks, but also for deep healing. It's really amazing. Another Dark Shadow deck that I particularly love to use is this Mud Tarot, and for me this is a very personal, deep, dark healing deck. So this deck is also out of print, and I know a lot of people also would love this, so sorry guys if this is annoying for you, but there's an application for this deck. You can have it on your computer, like on your a telephone for $7 or something, so at least there's a consolation with a full book, which is great. So this deck, to me, it's great for my shadow and dark days work. Anything else? Soul cards I love to use also. It's not tarot, but it's great for that. And the last category is deep healing decks. You know, any of these categories can do deep healing, obviously, but if you know that you need this, for me, deep healing is always connected with some kind of spiritual healing as well. It's not just physical. And deep healing for me, it's either being able to accept and embrace what's happening without me trying to fix it, or being able to give myself empathy and love for that situation that I'm in. Sometimes that means understanding what's happening. Sometimes it means allowing myself not to understand what's happening, because when I try to figure it out, it always follows with the fix it attitude. And sometimes deep healing is not about that. Sometimes deep healing is just about being present with your pain, or being present with that heavy feeling, you know. So decks for this, I actually was surprised, but recently I haven't worked with this deck a lot, but when I got it, I used to do a lot of creative writing, because these cards are full of symbols, and this is Voyager Tarot. So these decks are full of symbols, and I used to just really used creative writing for exploring my ideas about this deck and about the symbols that I see on the cards. And every morning I would pull a card and then just write, this reminds me of this, I don't know what I'm writing. So you just try to kind of free flow writing, and it's pretty amazing what stuff comes up, but you cannot stop. You can have to keep going. Even when you go, I don't know what to write, you write, I don't know what to write. And then at some point stuff just starts coming out of you. So this deck is very special for me. Also Margaret Peterson Tarot, I trimmed mine, but this deck for any type of spiritual evolutionary questions that I have, to really explore my intentions, to really deeply check within myself. I love this deck, and the booklet that comes with it, also invaluable. Love it. Another one is Osho Zen Tarot. It's very special. It's my first deck. Also, as I said, deep healing for me has to do with spirituality, and this deck and booklet are very connected like this. When I see this trust or nothingness, you know, suppression, isolation, it's very healing in itself, but also the whole energy around it, how it was created, with what intention it was created. It's very special to me. Another very healing and amazingly like soft and like a soft cushion deck is the Tarot of Transformation, and I really love this deck a lot, and also the companion book. So this one is very also special to me, because I feel like it's my higher self kind of guardian angel deck, when I even tend to have conversations with this deck. And I noticed this one really teaches me the free flow, you know, and really this accepting mode in this deck. It's very beautiful. I also love the Le Tarot de Femme Erotique. This is a very special deck for emotional healing, I'd say, but not always for like broken heart and stuff, but it has only females, and a lot a lot of the females just in different postures, different you know, positions, but it is very soulful, and I love the keywords. I use it a little bit more, maybe like oracle, I'd say, but it's very um, healing deck for any like emotional issues. I used it often for my friends also when they were going through breakups and stuff, and it works really well. And one more for the very deep healing decks, the Wildwood Tarot for me. I have a very special connection to this deck. It is very shamanic healing for me. So if I need to go like deep roots, generational stuff, biological karma, nature healing, this deck comes to hand straight away. And it's a beautiful deck for this work. I sometimes use often also animal themed decks, which works great for me, like the Wild Unknown. It's also one of those decks that I can do this work with. And when it doesn't have humans, sometimes it's really good for exploring my emotions without being influenced by other people, you know. And also one last very like healing deck for me is the Orasoma Tarot, because it also with the books that come with it, and there's different and beautiful energies, but also colors and just the feel of the deck. I think this is the purpose of the deck, to heal, so you can really use it for that. And I love to and enjoy using it for healing. So that's it, I think. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or anything, just shoot me an email or write a comment. I wish you a beautiful Sunday, and I speak to you soon. Bye.